Now we are ready when you are.
Hello, my name is Heather Rule. I'm a chemical engineering undergraduate here at the university. And today we're going to talk about the applications of technical communication in the workplace. Did you know that more than 1/2 of employers believe that recent graduates cannot effectively communicate in the workplace? That's according to Marketplace, which is an online website or an online newspaper. So that means that in general, employers are finding that we cannot communicate well in the workplace. And I believe that UW-Madison has, to kind of combat that, required that all engineers take EPD 397. All engineers except for chemical engineers. We actually have that requirement built into our summer lab, which is the final course we take, which includes a report and also a final technical presentation. Now, because of that, I really enjoy technical communications, and it's something that I think is interesting and important, and due to that, I have decided to also be a technical communication certificate student. So a short outline for today's presentation is we're going to talk a little bit about my work background to give you guys a good idea of kind of my experience and where I'm coming from. We're going to talk about the technical communication certificate coursework that I've had and also its real-world applications, how the technical communication certificate helped me during my technical internship from this past summer, and then we're going to go into a conclusion and any questions you have. So, as far as my personal background information, like I said, I'm a chemical engineer here. I'm also getting a certificate in international engineering and technical communication. My work experience is a little bit varied. My first summer after college, I worked as a maintenance officer or as a maintenance worker in the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning units at Appleton Coated, which is a paper mill in the Appleton area. I then worked for BorgWarner as a co-op student. I was with BorgWarner for 8 months. BorgWarner is a transmissions company based out of the Chicago area. This past summer, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about this later on in my presentation, I did my technical internship, which was at Universität in Gießen, Germany, which is a little bit north of Frankfurt. Also, I've had experience working with the Department of Engineering as a student assistant for Intro to Engineering 160, which is a design-based lab course for freshman students. So, like I said, technically as a chemical engineer, I'm not required to take EPD 397, and unfortunately I have not been able to take it yet. But here are some of the courses that I've already taken and how they have helped me prepare and be better prepared in the workplace. So, like Margot said, technical presentations was a very important course, and I found that because of this course, I'm much more comfortable giving presentations. Believe it or not, I used to pace and start shaking before presentations, so hopefully I'm not doing that and I'm speaking slow enough that everyone can follow me, because I tend to speed talk before I took that course. It's also let me help the Inter-EGR 160 folks, or the students that I've had, better prepare for their final presentations. As freshmen, they don't really have the experience to know what makes a good technical presentation, and this course has helped me help them better build their final reports and presentations. I also took a course on engineering ethics this past semester in the spring, and that really helped me understand the expectations that people have of engineers, and also what your rights as an engineer by law are, and what ethical standards you are held to that is different from perhaps other majors. I also worked with Wisconsin Engineering Magazine as a writer, and that really helped me develop my technical writing skills. Generally, I'm a very relaxed and kind of more comfortable writer, and this helped me meld that kind of comfortable, relaxed writing with a technical aspect that made it so that anyone could read any of my articles, and it didn't matter what background you were from, you could always understand them and follow them. So the big kind of thing that I would like to talk about is about my internship this past summer. Like I said, I worked at Universität, and the story, or the kind of the backstory that I should tell first, is that my first day I walked into this university department, and I had mostly corresponded with my new boss in English. And the first day we introduced ourselves in German, and then he looked at me and said, "Sollen wir das auf Deutsch machen? Should we do this all in German?" And I said, "Yeah." So I spent the next 2 months working exclusively in German, which any of you foreign language people or anybody that's taken a foreign language, you know there is such a big difference between the German language or the foreign language that you learn in a university kind of course setting, the conversational language you learn, and technical language. And I very quickly had to pick up a lot of technical vocabulary and technical terms and how to communicate effectively with all of my coworkers in a foreign language so that I could do my work well. So this kind of increased my foreign language abilities by tenfold, because it was almost a whole different language that I was learning. It also kind of increased my global knowledge. I really had to work in a different culture, and working exclusively in the other language really immersed me, in that culture and in that language. The final thing I did as part of this technical internship is I also did basic translations and technical editing. So maybe you might not know this, but in Germany and most of Europe, if you are a science major or a master's or PhD student, you have to write a final report or kind of give a thesis paper. All of those thesis papers are written in English. So it doesn't matter if you're a German student or if you're a Hungarian student studying in Germany, every single thesis paper is written in English. And that is because, while Germans might want to be able to communicate with people in China, generally Germans don't speak Chinese, but they speak English. And the Chinese generally, or a lot of people we work with internationally, also spoke English. So it was a common language, and it allowed me to really do some technical editing for people that did not have English as a first language, which was very different than editing someone who has English as a first language. So in conclusion, I find that UW-Madison better prepares engineers for the workplace by offering by requiring a higher level of technical communications or communications courses. I also believe that the Technical Communication Certificate adds additional preparation for students interested in technical communications. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Yes?
I'm interested in your internship and the editing.
Yes.
So when you talk about, just as clarification,
Sure.
when you talk about editing, you were taking their work in English and polishing it up?
Yes.
You weren't translating it back to German?
I did a little bit of translation work for them, but it wasn't exactly technical translation. So my department was a very international department, which meant that when my boss asked me, should we do this in German, he was very serious that I could spend the entire summer speaking English if I wanted to. And that's because we had people that were from Eastern Europe, we had people from Germany, I think we had someone from Spain that kind of the common language that everyone spoke was English. So because of that, a lot of the stuff that they put out on their website, they wanted it to be in English so that if anyone was interested in the department or if anybody was interested in potentially taking classes there or studying at Gießen, they wanted to have an option open in English so that people could easily read it. So I did take some of the German things that they had written about the department and translated them into English, which was somewhat technical but not super hardcore, intensive technical translation. So I did a little bit of that, but most of this editing that I did for thesis papers was English editing, or editing in English.
So did you learn, and possible answer is no, anything about writing technical stuff by virtue of having to work with students whose first language is another language and having to help them write what they want to write in English that you might not have learned just working with people here?
The biggest thing that maybe I learned was that you have to keep it simple, especially if you're writing in a foreign language, is that I would get these papers and, you know, if you've ever taken German, I don't know if anybody has, yes, I see a hand waving in the back. If you've ever taken German, Germans have, the German language has this fun thing that they make very compound words and very complex words and they rearrange different clauses and, you know, the classic, you know, kind of example is you can say, der Hund beißt den Jungen, the dog bites the boy. And you can actually say, reverse that, and you can say, den Jungen beißt der Hund. And because of like the text and the way that Germans have like the clause in it, it actually means the exact same thing, even if you rearrange those words. So kind of making sure that you keep it simple and keep it short. And I mean, still getting your, points across, but keeping it simple in a way that everyone can understand it, especially in an international setting. And I think that answers your question, right?
I don't expect anything.
Okay.
Or some good feedback on the presentation.
You can if you want.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay, so in one of your slides, and this is just overall, I'm a stickler for details in presentations, right? So I picked on ISYE. You said you worked for the UW Department of Engineering?
Yes.
Okay, so to my knowledge, there's no such thing as a UW Department of Engineering.
Interesting. Okay.
So, you know, it's a little thing, right?
There's not an engineering department?
There's not an engineering department. There are departments within the college, right? Like
Okay.
engineering career services is a department. But there's the industrial and systems engineering department. There's a mechanical engineering department. But there's not any just department of engineering.
So would that be, I would be working for the intro to engineering
You
department?
could, right, you
Right.
could either be, you know, it's a little tricky because inter-engineering is not really in a way its own
Yeah.
true department. So what I may do is just say in the College of Engineering, working for inter-engineering 160 sort of thing. The other thing I would say, because if I can give feedback just on the overall presentation, would be your tone changes when you answer questions and when you just chat and when you present. So you kind of go into like a presentation mode, which is not as, which is more formal, and depending on what environment you're in, and maybe that's your intention, I don't know what your guidelines are, but you know, in a small, more intimate group like this, I think you could use your more casual voice, and I think that would work better in a smaller, intimate room like this. So that's just.
I think in particular your story about telling your supervisor, no, I do want to do this in German. I think that's a nice, sort of a nice conversational touch. You seemed really excited when you were talking about that. Part of I think I might have scared everyone because I invited like 20 people, not realizing exactly how many of my colleagues teach between 1:30 and 2:45 on Wednesday afternoons. So I think everyone was rehearsing for, you know, a room full of potentially critical people. Versus me, and I tend to get sidetracked and be relatively informed. So. But I think it's a good point, though.
And it's not personal, but I have to go to presentations.
So my question for you would just be, if there were any significant differences between American work culture and German work culture that really stood out to you, but I realized that your answer is going to be tempered somewhat by the fact that you were in a German academic environment versus a German industrial environment.
And actually, to answer that, when I worked at Four Corner, I actually did work internationally with Germany. We had a plant in Heidelberg that we had quite a bit of work with.
Okay.
So I do have a little bit of industrial experience with that. Just we did a lot of support work for them, and unfortunately, that's really all I can say.
Yeah.
But so, you know, I have had experience with the industrial side of it. It was different yet similar at the same time, that I found a lot of the cultural things that I found at the university were very similar to what I had experienced with working internationally at Four Corner.
Mm.
And some of those you don't see. I saw much more in the academic setting just because, you know, the biggest example, and I know this sounds small, but go with me on this. In Germany, you close every door all the time. And in the US, we have very open houses. Like, I don't think I ever closed my bedroom door as a kid. Like, you just didn't do it, like, unless like you really needed to be alone, that's when you close the door. I mean, I think you'll find that in a lot of, you know, university apartment settings and also at homes. Americans build very open apartments and open homes that don't have quite as many doors. And so it took me about 3 weeks to realize that just because someone's door was closed did not mean don't come in. You know, kind of like the way that I put it, because I had to write a paper about this, was, you know, the German version of a closed door is the American version of an open door, and the German version of a locked door is the American version of a closed door. That generally in the US, if there's a door that's closed, you knock on it, and you know, then you kind of edge your way in. Is everything okay? Can I come in and talk to you? Whereas there, you know, it was just expected. You knock on the door, and maybe try, you know, if you went in, this sounds bad, but like, if you went into the bathrooms there, people would like jiggle the bathroom handles because they were like, it's locked. Oh, okay. Now I guess I won't go in. Where like in the US, if you see a closed bathroom door, you knock on the door, hello, is there anyone in there? And just that difference, I know that sounds really weird, but like, I thought my boss was never in because he just kept his door closed all the time. So it took me a little bit to figure that one out. that was my biggest kind of like, oh, I guess I'm screwing this one up.
Yeah. All right, excellent. Thank